Welcome to the Momentum Lifestyle Podcast, where we interview an inspiring, educational, and entertaining guest to help you build confidence, find balance, and live a life of impact. We'd like to thank our sponsor today, Be Spunky. Now, Blake, Genoa, and myself have been using their Reboot product for well over 6 months now, and it has been life-changing. I found myself recovering faster, having way more energy throughout the day, and honestly feeling just more jacked up as a man. And this is because Reboot is clinically formulated to support healthy male hormone levels, providing stress relief, improved strength and stamina, enhanced drive, and overall well-being. Be Spunky Reboot contains a proprietary blend of 10 natural and organic herbs and active ingredients that are renowned for helping men to enhance physical and cognitive performance, improve stamina, energy, and endurance, optimize testosterone levels, support healthy reproductive function, support cardiovascular function, relieve stress, mild anxiety, irritability, relieve tiredness, fatigue, support healthy sleep patterns, and support healthy body weight. So as you can see, it is a must-have product for all men. So head to their website, bespunky.com.au. That's bespunki.com.au, and use the code MOMENTUM to receive 10% off all Be Spunky products. Today we have amazing actor Beulah Koale. Beulah Koale. I can't believe I fucked that up. Beulah Koale. Mate, thank you for joining us. It seems we've kind of switched hemispheres in the last 6 months. I'm over in Hawaii now, and you're back in the Southern Hemisphere in New Zealand. How have you found the transition back home?
I moved there during the pandemic, so it was weird as hell coming back to a country that was, how do you say it? Super concerned about COVID.
Yeah, that's putting it lightly, isn't it?
So it took a while to adjust.
Yeah,
but, we're here now, and it's where I wanted to be for my kids.
Good, man. And how many kids do you have?
I got 2 little boys, twin boys. They just took off to dinner with their mom, and I got one in the oven with mom. So
nice.
So 3 boys all up.
3 boys, mate. That's the dream. I've got one bun in the oven myself, actually, due in July. So I've got a little boy with my partner. That's the first one, and I'm so excited for fatherhood. Do you have any tips for me, mate, for first time dad?
Nah, man, just listen to mom, bro. Listen to mom, and I don't know. It was always a choice. It's a choice to be a good father. Now, it's my understanding about being a father. So you choose to be a good father. It's very simple. You just got to choose to be.
Mate, absolutely. That's well said, brother. I'm really fortunate that my dad and my mum did such a good job in choosing to show up as parents. I'm really fortunate, and they're here on the island with me as well, actually about 45 minutes away near Diamond Head. So I've got grandpa and grandma nearby to help me with the upbringing. So I'm very fortunate, man. And hearing about your story and reading about your journey over the past 5-6 years or so, mate. I was so excited to jump on and speak to you, and I really want to get a good idea of what your family life was like, what it was like growing up for you, even on the father thing, what was your dad like, and how did that affect the trajectory of your life?
Yeah, I think, we're gonna start the beginning. Like, I grew up in a town called Otara in South Auckland, which is people think it's the bad side of Auckland. I don't think that. When you grow up in it, you don't know. It was fun. I honestly had a great childhood growing up. My mom and dad were awesome growing up. I didn't have a lot. We're just like my parents moved. They met in New Zealand. They're immigrants. And they, just started a life. My father was the breadwinner of the family. I just knew him as, he just worked every day in a little shitty old factory job. And I just went to school, man. And they weren't the best schools, and there were times when I was very used to being hungry, like poor and stuff. But we're always all good. We had a good family around us. We had a good support network. When we didn't have food, we'd just go to our auntie's house and hang out with them. So that was all cool. That was all simple. It wasn't until later on in my life where stuff, I was like, shit, this has happened to us. I thought this happened to other people.
Yeah.
And that's when one day my father just went to work and he just didn't come back, and he had an affair with a lady and just shot off to Australia, and had a child with this other lady. So he was like my hero my entire life, and then he wasn't. And one day, and I have 4 brothers, 1 sister, and a mom, and there was no more breadwinner of the house. So how old was I?
Fuck, man. How old were you?
Probably 22.
Yeah.
I was an actor in New Zealand, which you don't make much, unless you're on TV and nothing. I made a little bit of money, but I had to work 3 jobs, 2 or 3 jobs at a time, just to try and get my brothers and sisters, because I'm the eldest, through school and pay a mortgage, and and try and look after everyone, make sure that they were okay, because it's pretty traumatic for, I think the youngest was 6 at the time. It was pretty traumatic for each and every one of us when you get dropped a car that you don't even want. Like, I didn't even ask for the mortgage, but
yeah,
I got a mortgage at 22, bro. So it was pretty much pick up. I would say I take it as a challenge, and it was a pretty good challenge.
And did you naturally step into that role, or was it a really difficult role for you to take on at 22, or was it kind of like a back against the wall? Well, I'm here, and there's no option for me. I've just got to step up.
Yeah, it was that. It was, I had to do it, I didn't want my brothers and sisters to suffer.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and I kind of also naturally stepped into it anyway, because I've always been a protective brother, ever since growing up where I grew up. You're always protective over my siblings. And I have 1 sister, and she was bullied a lot in school. And I naturally was the protective brother, and still am to this day. I was talking to my brothers yesterday. I was like, there's no one, you can never hurt me, because I'm not afraid of death or anything. But the only way you can hurt me is when you get to my family, or you get to the ones I love, or I can't help them. That's the only way you will get me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you were always like that, or with your father leaving, that kind of shaped you into that mentality?
Yeah, I was always like that initially, but my father was like, he was the alpha, like that. I was like, he protects me.
Yeah.
And then when he left, it was just like, all right. And I'm pretty cold-blooded now.
Yeah.
with who I let close to my family, and how I love. Like I have a bunch of rules for myself. I just noticed in the last couple of weeks during interviews, I'm like, I'm a rule person, and one rule I have is I keep it tight, keep it small, keep it real, and that's just the type of people that I have around me, or who are close to my family. There's not a lot of people, but they're very good, genuine people, and there's no yes men. They're full of people who tell me I'm a piece of crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mate, well, here at Momentum, our main thing is around championing and challenging men to be better. And the challenge piece is big. Like a lot of people just have those yes men around them, and a hallmark of a good friend is someone who can pull you aside and go, mate, well, what are you doing? Like, this is not acceptable behavior, and pull you up on it. And I think it's something that's really lost, at least across Australian culture. And now that I'm in America, and I've spent a bunch of time in America, I'm like, last year I was hanging out with like college students, and I was like, you want to see yes men? It's like college is just yes men and women. Like, I couldn't believe it, man. I couldn't believe it. Is it a different culture in New Zealand, or is it something that you have had to be really clear around your boundaries and go, nah, I need to create these people around me, and and it doesn't come natural to the community, or it is a bit more ingrained in the community to hold each other accountable to your values, to what you, to, to your word, simple things like that?
I think in most Western communities, there's a lot of yes men. It's just in that culture.
Yeah.
And to find it, it takes you a while and it takes you life experience to realize what yes men actually are, and what they look like in your world. Because in my world, they might look a little bit different to your world. But I learned at a very young age, just going because of life, to read people. I think, which is why I'm really good at acting, because all acting is just reading people, then reacting honestly.
Yeah.
So I always got to read people, and I don't know. In New Zealand, they pretend to be humble, but they're not very humble. Then they don't like it when people make it, and But then in America, it's just a louder, more arrogant version of that. So yes men are the same anyway. So yeah, and it's funny because the yes men in my life are mainly women. They're my wife and they're my agent, who she's known me since I was 17, and my close family members, because I didn't have great male role models growing up, none at all. Like I thought it was my father. He was my male role model, but it turns out he wasn't. So he had taught me up until 22. I questioned in those couple of years, and still now, I guess. But yeah, they're mainly women that hold me up and keep me honest. And I have a couple of good friends now. Like one of them, he used to be a famous rugby league player. His name's Ruben Wiki. He's one of my big bros. He's known me since I was 17, captain of the New Zealand team, and he's been through it all. And we would sit down in a sushi store and talk about life and break down and cry. These freaking big brown men, and but we're just honest with each other. So yeah, I enjoy being honest. If you ask people around me what am I like, I'm pretty sure they'd say I'm very honest.
Yeah. And how important is that then for you to continually show up as an honest man?
Yeah, your word is everything to me. Your word is, and I learned that while I was in Hawaii by one of my best mates over there. He's a Navy SEAL, and he taught me about the word, what your word actually means, and what the word of the men and women in his community, what that means to them. And I was like, wow, really? So I'm very careful with what I say yes to people and what I say no to people. And I'm very careful of turning up, being on time, and same thing, I expect the same back.
Yeah.
And people learn really quick with me if they don't keep their word.
Yeah.
I cut people off, or I let them know straight away. And if it doesn't mean anything to them, I let them know what it means to me.
Yeah.
And how important, because as soon as someone tells a little lie to me, I'm like, well, then what else are you gonna lie about? What else are you gonna turn up on time for? So then it also holds standards that you should, follow.
Mate, absolutely. And it's funny that you bring that up, because it's something that Blake and Genoa, who are the other two co-founders of Momentum, we kind of set themes for us to work on, and we call each other out. We actually, once a month, we do a champion and challenge for each other. So we say, hey mate, you're doing this really well, I'd like to champion you. And then challenge, we say, hey mate, we think you can do this better, and here's the solution. And at the start of the year, we set out kind of like our intention for the year and the themes that we're focusing on. That being a man of my word is my theme for this year to really work on. And it's been something that they've highlighted to me. It's like, Dill, you're not a man of your word, like you say those, yes, I'll do that, and then you don't follow through on it. And just how important it is. And the more and more I've kind of worked on it with the coaches that I've got, and with Blake and Genoa, the more and more I'm like, fuck, that's just such a lost philosophy in today's world. But like basic, it's really basic, and it's really easy to embody once you start practicing it, because it really does. It is about being like aware of maybe 3 or 4 things, like don't say yes if you're not going to do it, or if you don't think you can do it. Like just that simple thing right there has been big for me in not taking on too many projects, or not being like, yeah, man, let's grab a beer. Like, like, oh yeah, good to see you, man. Let's grab a beer. It's like, are you actually going to get a beer with that guy? Probably not. Like, why do we say these things? And when you, as you mentioned, it's like when you start small, it's such a quick path to, oh, I'll just bend my word a little bit more and more and more and more. And then all of a sudden, you can't be trusted with anything.
Yeah, man. And you don't want to look at you don't want to be seen as a person that can't be trusted. Well, I don't. I don't ever want people to be like, oh, don't tell B, man, because I don't know if you'll do it. Because I have a couple of friends like that, and I tell them, and I'm really frank, and I'm not mean. I'm just honest because it's the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you can't argue against the truth because it's just the truth.
Yeah, man, 100%. What do you think it is? Like, what do you think's driving people away from? Again, it's a pretty basic thing to embody. Like, what do you think it is?
People don't like confrontation. Like people don't like, I'll just say yes to this because I don't want to deal with it later, and then like you almost tell yourself, I'd rather just lie about it. But people don't like saying, oh, I can't make it, and because of this and this and this, and then the conversation after that. People don't like those 2 little steps after that. And I think it's fear. Fear is massive, and it's so silly when you try to be a man of your word. You see how silly it is to go against it, because it's just like, what? Like there's nothing to be scared about. And when you do try and live that way, like everything else falls into place. The perspective of people that you want to look at you a certain way changes in a good way. The people who you like producers and stuff, like, go to B, man. He's honest. He's reliable. And I'll tell you, bro, I've gotten many jobs because of that.
Yeah.
Just because of, sure, my acting's, I can act and do that stuff, but I'm pretty certain I got put through some crazy ways because of just trying to keep my word. Be that honest individual that's reliable.
Yeah. And that's the thing with how far. So, I was reading this post the other day, and it's like, you want to separate yourself from the herd, just be a man of your word, like, and you will separate yourself from 99% of people because of how far we've gone away from that basic principle. And it's, it's something that I'm really grateful to have men around me that have highlighted that, because it doesn't feel good either. Like when people are like, man, like I can't, like you're our business partner, but I can't trust you to do this. And you're like, oh, fuck, that hurts. That doesn't feel good.
Bro. Yeah.
But I'd rather be told it and then know I need to work on it than just let it, be brushed under the carpet. And then all of a sudden I'm 27 now, all of a sudden I'm 30, 35, and I'm still got that problem. And it's like, fuck, that really doesn't look good as a 30, 35-year-old, like it doesn't look good at any age. But the older you get, the more, you want to cement those values and cement those principles and have a track record of being trustworthy and reliable. So yeah, I love that you brought that up, man. It's so important. I also wanted to ask you, man. So back to your father just up and leaving it at when you were 22. What do you think upon reflection now? How do you think that impacted you to today? Like, what was the big thing that had left on you?
It was crazy, man. It's still crazy now. Like last week, it was crazy with my father. It's definitely a major thing in my life because I think about it a lot. And there's been moments in my life where I've forgiven him, and I thought I forgave my father till last week. But it also happened. I'll come back to your question, but it also happened at the craziest time because it happened when I got the gig for Thank You for Your Service. So my first breakthrough DreamWorks movie, written by the guy who wrote American Sniper, and I was supporting lead with Miles Teller.
Yeah.
Like the thing that everyone dreams about as an actor, you cracked it into Hollywood.
Yep.
And at the same time, my father had just destroyed my whole world and my whole family's world. And yeah, bro, that was a dark time. I can't even remember the shooting process, but I remember I was away for like 3 months, and it was dark, man. I was by myself. I was lonely. I was in the States, never been there before. And I was just trying to figure it out. And I literally used the movie as a therapy session for myself because it was a dark, dramatic role of this soldier who suffers from PTSD. I was kind of going through like the trauma myself at the time. So, you know, I didn't tell anyone. No one needed to know.
Yeah.
But there's only a couple of people, handful of people knew, my family members and my agent knew what was actually going on. And I just used it. And when they watch the movie, they cry because of the movie, but also because they know what I was going through at that specific time when I was making that movie, and a bunch of those emotions you see on there aren't for the movie.
Yeah.
They're for me just like releasing stuff. And my agent cries every time because she knows exactly what I was going through. And after that movie, people were like, that was an insane debut performance by me. But I was just like, cool, man. And you know, that was, you guys don't know, but you know, I was just going through a really rough time at the time, but like thankful for my art that I can express it. You know, I have something to vent it into. And going back to your question, how did it shape me? Like, it shaped me of how I am now, like, how I am as a father. And I've always been very competitive. I still am, but it's just, I guess I've always had this chip on my shoulder to prove that I can be the father that my dad couldn't be. You know, just before my kids left to dinner, they're like, "Where's your dad?" And my wife's just in the background laughing because I always laugh when my kids like ask me, "Where's your dad?" And I was just like, "I don't know, son." You know, but because my kids know that I'm the best dad. You know, and that's one of my goals, to be the best father I can be for my kids.
Yeah.
And I don't say that lightly. Like, people say that, I don't know if they mean it, but I say that with everything. Like, it's my passion to be a great father.
Yeah. So how important was the role then as acting as like your therapy session, you know? Like, do you ever think back and go, how would your life turned out differently if you didn't get that role and you had to stay like in New Zealand and kind of sit in the rawness of, as you just said, you know, your whole world being destroyed versus being able to kind of distance yourself from that collapsing world, go and, I imagine you're pretty fucking passionate about acting. So, you know, dive headfirst into like your passion, and then also had that ability to really feel those emotions and go through them as your therapy. How important was it?
Yeah, that was everything, man. You know, well, if I didn't have that movie, if you know, if we're in a different universe and that didn't happen, I feel like, and I trust that I would have found a way to figure it out, because I never give up. That's one thing about me. Like, I'm so competitive, I will figure it out.
Yeah.
And I would have probably gone and found something else in New Zealand to do to release that onto. You know, I would have gone out and played rugby maybe, and I would have figured it out, because the cost was my family. That was what was at stake. Me keeping it together and trying to keep a cool head, even still to this day. If I don't, my family's at stake. So there's nothing that I'll do everything until until I can't breathe for my family's happiness. So yeah, I trusted I would have figured it out. But having that movie right there and then at the moment was perfect. You know, everything happens for a reason. And I felt like that was, you know, that's just life. That's what happened. And I'm very, now it was sucky, but now every time a challenge happens, I'm just like, cool, it's a challenge. Like, I just see it as that. I don't see it as something bad, or I'm just like, okay, it's just another thing to get over, because my whole life, like, to speak for myself, it's always been those challenges, and it's always just been If I just push a little bit harder, just a little bit further, there's that light right there at the end of the tunnel. It's honestly right there. And I have so much conviction in that and self-belief in myself, that every time any challenge happens in my life, I know I just have to push forward. It's very simple for me. Just push forward and it's right there. And the reward will be awesome. And then another challenge will come. That's just how life works in my head.
And do you think your father instilled that into you from 0 to 22?
I guess so, man. You know, he is, up until that moment, he was great, man. And he'd always like make me question. I'd always come back. He didn't have great English, but he's like, try and make your brain jealous, son. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, try and make your brain jealous of what that kid has and you don't have. And there was always that competitive, and I always wanted to impress my father. So I was like a nerd in school. I was in the debating team. I was the vice captain for the rugby team. I was the deputy head boy. Like, I was an overachiever.
Yeah, damn.
Not because I was smart or anything. It was just, I was just competitive. And I guess that was instilled in me from my dad. You know, that's what he was good at. And still to this day, like you know, that trait is still there. And people know that I'm super competitive.
Yeah. I can't even fathom going through that on any level, but on the emotional level of looking up to someone and having 22 years of like a relationship where you had an idea of who they were and they lived up to that idea. So you're like, oh yeah, my dad is XYZ, and I see that day in, day out, and getting a lot of positive traits from him as well, and being like, fuck yeah, I'm this man because of him, to all of a sudden like that, like shattering of everything. What was that internal battle like for you in that experience of like role model to wow, I don't want to be at all like you? What was that internal struggle or battle that you had to go through?
Yeah, internally, I don't know if there's a word to describe that feeling or that trauma, but like two really disgusting car crashes, and it's still very intertwined. Like, everything's intertwined and everything's confusing. Like, my world was shattered because my dad was my world. Every interview up until that point, I always talked about my father on TV, and I always see it back on YouTube. When I look back at interviews, I always talked about my father and making it for him. And when I did make it, he left. I was like, damn, you just needed to wait a little bit longer, man. And but I don't know how to describe it. It was traumatic, man. It was rough. It still is rough. Now I think about it, but I just remember being in it and going, this could end. You know, I can see how people would just end their life very easy. And there was a point then, you know, but my missus helped me out through that. But you can see how easy it is. But then that mindset of just like, oh, you just gotta just truck through it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's gonna come. Tomorrow's gonna come. The further along you go, I learned to manage the pain easier. You know, it's still there. It's still traumatic, but I learned to manage it, and I learned to understand what that feeling was. I just needed to understand what it was, what the feeling of your whole world crashing was, because initially it was just confusion. But then once I slowly started to unravel that car crash and realize, okay, this is what that's attached to, and this is that, and what it feels. I was like, cool, now I understand it. All right, now I can learn to deal with it and manage it. And now we're just going to move forward and use this to destroy the worst of my career, and just go out there and just use it as pure raw emotion and just take down everything and everyone in the industry. So
that's incredible that you were able to use that as fuel for the fire. I think think a lot of people, and I'm thinking what I would do in that situation, and fuck, man, like the resolve to be able to go through that,
Mm.
and kind of even the language that you're using, you know, unravel it and see what was there and pull it this little thing and see, oh, why does that pull, and all those
Mm.
things, man. It's fucking it's a lifelong journey once you start to like do the work
Yeah.
and practice self-reflection. It doesn't ever end, right? You're always,
No,
oh
no.
fuck, this is for this, and that's because of my uncle said I was
Yeah,
fat when I was 6, and oh
yeah,
fuck, okay,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
you know
yeah.
like whatever it is. uh and what are the most important things that you're trying to instill into your boys?
Definitely keep your word
Mm,
is massive. Like I try to nip it in the butt anytime.
yep.
Like with my babies when they tell little fibs and stuff. They're slowly starting to get to the age where they go, "It wasn't me, Dad. It wasn't me." And then
Yeah.
I'm on them. I'm just
Yeah.
like, Daddy doesn't care like what it is. Daddy just, and my boys know it's like, what does Daddy not like? And they're like liars.
Yeah.
And there's certain rules. And before they left the dinner, like, what is our job for money or for mommy? And it's like protect mommy. So when they go out there,
Yeah.
certain rules I have for them, and I just want them to not be liars.
Yeah.
Always look after their mom, and I want them to always know that I love you. That's very very important, and say I love you all the time.
Mm.
Because I didn't know that wasn't normal until I met my wife's family. Like people say I love you all the time. That was a very weird sentence to
Really?
say. Yeah, it's like well, you don't say that in my
Mm.
family, And now I say it to everyone that
Yeah.
I love in my family. I love you, bro, and I forced it onto my brothers,
Mm.
like my little brothers who are very staunch and come from that hood mentality place. I was just like, I love you, bro. I love you. And then they were, oh, yeah, yeah. I'm like, I love you, man. Like, you love me? And then I
Yeah.
just put it onto, and now everyone says, I love you. And I really want
I
my
love
kids.
that.
Yeah. I want my kids to know that's normal. That says
Mm.
that over 100 times a day.
Yeah.
And that's not a weird thing. So I
Mm.
always want that.
That's cool, man. I really like that. Growing up, my mum's side of the family was very much like that. Like my mum, my grandparents on my mum's side, and my whole family was every conversation, love you too. Like every
Yeah,
time we saw them, love you, kisses, hugs.
yeah,
And then my dad's side of the family, so my mum's from America, and
yeah,
from California. My dad's side Australian, and it was the complete opposite. Like
yeah.
my pop passed away maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it would be like a handful of times we would have said it to each other, like
Mm,
real, like not often. And it's one of those things where you're like, well, I know he loves me, and he knows that I love him, but I've made a massive point, to your point, of like really saying it all the time, man. Like my friends, they know I'll text them. I'm like, I love you, bro. On the phone, I'll end all my conversations with I
yeah,
love
man.
you. I'm big on it. I'm really big on it because I think a couple things. Like one, the world is a tough place, and people are trying their best, and people are hurting, and people are in pain, and like it just those little things like, man, hey, you're loved. Like I love you, dude. And I think one thing is big too that I'm starting to integrate more into my language as well is telling my friends that I'm proud of them. I think there's a massive starvation amongst men and boys that we don't tell them that, hey man, I'm proud of you for you being you, not because you won a gold medal at the school carnival or because you got an A at school.
Cool.
I'm just proud of you because, dude, you're doing really well. You're out here, and like, man, I love you and I'm proud of you. And like I've had conversations with my friends where like they're like tearing up and they're like, fuck you, man. And I'm like, I'm proud of you, man. I'm proud. And like, nah, like, I'm like really trying because they're starved. Like young, like boys and young and men are really starved of affection and starved of praise. And it's great, man, to hear you
Yeah.
saying that that's one of the things that you're really trying to. Where do you think that came from or comes from?
Well, that comes from not being loved, It
Yeah.
definitely comes that, and seeing it in my wife's family and going, hey, like I take things to the extreme. And I'm like, yeah, I put it on my friends.
Mm.
I have a thing where I just if I think about a certain friend, I call them like on it, like when I'm driving, usually when I'm driving.
Yeah.
And I just be like, hey, what's up, man? All good? I'm like, yeah, man, just want to say I love you, man. Check in on you. How you been? All good? They're like, yeah, yeah. This is random ass, man. I was like, cool, all good. You been? And check in and then just say, sweet man, love you, bro. Have a great day and just hang up. And I'm like, cool. I guess I try and listen to my conscience. Like, if it thinks about them, I'm like, okay, I gotta call them and check up on them, and I'm big on that. But I'll take that. I'm proud of you. I'll take that one too. That's a pretty good one. So,
Yeah, it is, man. Yeah. That's
it's
cool, man.
important to
I
hear it.
really, pardon?
It's important to hear it.
Yeah, definitely, man. Especially from men too, to hear
Yeah,
it from other men, really
yeah,
important. And just and something that we're not very good at is sitting in the praise. Like, hey man, I love you. And that, yeah, bro. Like, yeah. And you're like, nah, man, I love you. And
yeah,
you're like,
man.
and you have to like we're uncomfortable sitting in it and receiving it. We're like, oh, this doesn't feel good. Like, why are you calling me? Why are you saying this? It's like no other reason, bro. Just letting you know.
That's it. Yeah.
That's epic, man. That's epic, mate. So I want to take you way back to when you were younger. What got you into acting?
Bro, it was all a fluke, man. It was all a fluke. I went to a high school where we didn't have a drama school, and we just didn't have the funding for it. And in my last year of high school, my English teacher, he decided to make a drama club. And he said, if you join this drama club and get enough people to join, you get to skip 3 different periods on Monday. I was like, what? He's like, yeah. And then I was the vice captain of the rugby teams. I was like, yo, we're gonna jump into this drama thing and skip a bunch of classes on Monday. And then
Yeah.
the drama club was full. And that's where like I just went along for fun. And then he would bring in different theater practitioners to take us through a session. And I kind of I liked it. And there's this lady who works for a company called Massive Theater Company, who I'm still attached to this day. And this white lady called Sam Scott. And white people weren't very prevalent in my part of town. So it was always weird being like, she was like almost Gordon Ramsay-ish. I just hear stories about like girls being like, man, I didn't like that lady. Like she was so mean to us and she was just honest. And
Yeah.
then I was kind of drawn to that. I was like, well, who is this? I want to meet this lady. And then she like met me, and then like I done her classes and I was just being a little dick about it. And then she told me, she's like, why do you play rugby? I was like, oh, because it's fun, hang out with my boys. But then she got it. I figured out, I was like, oh, well, I play rugby to let out the stuff in my life, let out the anger. I can physically hurt someone or get hurt myself legally. And that's a vent for me. And she goes, what if I told you that you can let out more than that? Not just anger, you can let out love, you can let out joy, you can let out happiness, sadness. And that question was in my head. I was just like, what do you mean? She goes, you can do that with this acting thing. And that question is still in my head to this day. And it's a question that I still haven't figured out, but I love trying to figure out, because I didn't go to school for acting. I just like from then on, I went to school holiday programs, which were for free in Otada, and just like kept going. And I was terrible at it. I was doing theater, but I just remember I was like, I want to be better than that kid. All right, I'm gonna figure out till I get better than that kid. Got better than him. I was like, I'm gonna be better than the next kid. Like my competitiveness just started overtaking. But with that, the question of trying to figure out what the answer to her question was. You can use this job to let it out. And this theater company uses your own life to tell stories. Like we don't take Shakespeare and stuff and put up a play. Like they're massive on writing plays yourself from your life and putting it and performing it out to people. And that's how I act. That's how I learned to act. I learned that I can use my life to tell stories, no matter what character or what story it is. And that's why I always tell people, like, what do what's some advice? I'm like, bro, your whole life is your PhD in the acting world. people just need to learn to like be themselves. And I'm always trying to remind myself, it's just like, just be yourself. You're enough. I'm enough. You know, there's no one else in the world that can act like me. So don't try and act like anyone else.
Yeah.
And I use things in my life, and I either enhance it with the research that I put in on a character, or make it smaller, and I just add it to the potion of the character that I've built in this world. But the main ingredient has to be me. There's always me in the character.
Yeah.
So it has to be from my life. And that's why if I just combine my competitiveness, with my life, and me searching for this answer to learn how to act. And that was my school. And then I just learned from job to job, all the way up till I got to America, or while I'm in America now. And it's still the same thing. I'm just trying to figure out this question. And yeah.
That's cool, man. And you know, I was reading a little bit about that journey. You know, you spent your last $50 to send the tape across to America, and something that actually really surprised me, and I don't know why it surprised me, but it kind of was. I was like, when I was reading it, I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense. But when they were looking for a Samoan character, they were like, who do you know? And I was reading this article, and they're like, oh, The Rock, and it was like, who else? And it was they. I think what the article said, something like they had like 2,000 or 1,200 guys, and only one or two of them were Samoan in that first casting. And I was like, fuck, no shit. Like, because I'm always when I'm watching movies and you see like I've never twigged with a Samoan actor or with actors of color, but like an old lady who's like 90 years old, I'm like, what does that woman do day to day? Does she feel such a role that she's actually in a lot of different things as a 90-year-old, or like the greasy pizza guy that's overweight? I'm like, does he get a lot of roles? Like, what does he do day to day? But it was really interesting to read that, there's not a lot of Samoan actors, at least in Hollywood. So why is that? Is it a case of there's not enough roles and it doesn't entice enough people there? Is it a case of the roles are there, but there's not enough demand and or not enough supply, and so they just fill it in with, I don't know what the right word is, but they white cast the roles. Well, why is that?
I think there's always Pacific Island actors everywhere. There's actors of every culture out there in the world, but they're not there if you don't look. You know? They're not there if they're not needed. So for a long time, Pacific Island roles weren't needed, and even black people roles weren't needed. Indigenous people of Australia roles weren't needed. So it's only when they started to need them, Hollywood, to look good, like if we're honest, to look good on paper, they were like, well, where do we look? Because we've never ever looked for brown people, but we're just like at the bottom of the world or all over the world. Like, we've been here the whole time. Right here. So it's I hope The Rock, he definitely opened that door for us. He opened that door, and he is proud of his Samoan side and his Polynesian side, and that was the doorway we needed. And I'm just happy to be born in that era that wasn't stuck in where there weren't any roles. So I don't take it lightly being in the position I am. Like, I don't try and be a rock star about it, or like, I'm very honest. Like, I'm here talking to you about honest stuff. I'm very. It's nothing. I don't take it lightly. That I know I want to be a pioneer for my people, and I hope that when I'm done on this earth, I leave this place that I am as an actor way better for the next person. Almost like an All Black leaving the jersey in a better state than it was when they first jumped in for the next player. And that's what I want to do with acting for Polynesian people, or just people in general. Like, I don't want to just tell Polynesian stories. I want to tell everyone's stories, and I want them to cast a Polynesian. So
How important is it? Because for me, being a white man, I see white men everywhere. And, that's a big part of the conversation being had is like this equal representation. And the work that I do outside of Momentum is around mentoring young men to be better men as well, essentially. And one thing that I'm really aware of is role models. If you are a young boy, you need a man to look up to, and you need that healthy ideal of masculinity. And so for you growing up, and once you start getting into acting, what was that like having the dream process like for you? Like was it a case of, I want to be like The Rock and I want to get to Hollywood? Or was it, oh, I'm looking to make it onto New Zealand TV and that's the dream and that's the goal? Because you could see that, and that was able to, like, you could see and touch and feel those people.
yeah, and like it's gonna sound weird, but like everything that happened to me, like I planned it. And only like maybe 5 people in my life know my plan and know how I done it. And it happened in the time frame that I said it was gonna happen. It was year by year, and I have journals on it, and it's all in my book, and it's all saved. Like when I first cracked it to Hollywood, it happened in that year. I don't know how I was gonna do it, but in my 5-year plan, it was in the last year. It's like, I'm gonna crack Hollywood. And all my friends in New Zealand, all my actor mates, all my white actor mates are like, I don't know how you're gonna do it, man. That's kind of hard. You need to do it this way, and you need to go out for pilot season and go this and spend this amount of money. I'm like, you guys have all done that. I'm not gonna do that. And then they're like, well, good luck, kid. But I'd be saying that with actors on a TV show. I'm like, just the fact that I'm on this TV show, that like impossible is possible, because I was this kid from the hood who wrote this 5-year plan, which was like in the first year, like do a theater show. The second year was like do a theater show, do a commercial, and get a number of auditions, and then I just built onto it throughout the third year, and then get a film, all of that stuff, and then the last year was all of that 4 years combined plus make it into Hollywood, and it happened, and it happened the way I thought it was going to happen, in the most inconvenient way, where they just like found a guy by chance. But I don't believe in chances, because I spoke that into existence. And I told myself, and my energy was going that way, and I was preparing myself for that moment. So when the moment came, I was prepared, and I knew how to do an American accent, and I was like ready, and I spent my last $50, and I was like, let's go, let's do this. And I'm a massive believer in goal setting, and I still have goals now. Like that 5-year plan was supposed to be impossible. I made it possible, and now my next. Well, I'm in the crux of my next one is proving the impossible. So I always try and come up with dreams that seem far-fetched for me, because I already know the formula. I already know it works.
Man, that's a really cool story. And then from the Thank You for Your Service movie, you then moved on to Hawaii Five-0, right? And how long were you on that show for?
Yeah, I was on there for just over 3 years, 3 seasons.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. And even that show, that happened by not the normal way that everyone thinks it happens. It happened because someone left the show. Then when Jason Hall, the director for the military film, was looking for a Samoan kid, he asked the Hawaii Five-0 showrunner. He put forward his suggestions, and he didn't end up using his options. He found me, but the showrunner for Five-0 asked Jason. He goes, "Hey, how was that Samoan kid? The film hadn't been released yet." He goes, "How was that kid?" And Jason told him, that kid was the best decision I'd ever made in that film. And from that conversation, and then Jason sent him a trailer, I got cast in Hawaii Five-0 as a main character. No audition. It was just like, and then I just went on there. I was just like, all right, like this is my second job in America. Like, let's figure this out.
Yeah.
And it was meant to happen, because it fit like a glove, man. Like it was perfect. It was a perfect timing for me, because I needed, one of my goals is to figure out the American film industry and how it worked. And then that's what I used that for. And I was probably sounded arrogant to one of the actors on the show because I said, "Oh, I've only got 3 years on the show, then I got to get out of here because I'm probably going to figure it out." And these actors have tried their whole life to get on here, and they're like, "What are you talking about, kid? You're from New Zealand, you're poor." And I was like, "Nah, because like I'll get comfortable, and my rule is I have to chase something that I'm scared of." So, and then after 3 years, I was locked in the contract, and I didn't know how I was going to get out of it. And the show ended, and I was like, "I'm out." Now I can go, and I was grateful for FiveO. It was amazing. And it was one of the best times of my life. But I was comfortable, and that's not good for me. I have to be scared.
Yeah.
Like I chase my entire life. I chase things that I'm scared of, and I run towards fear because that's my compass of success is run to fear.
And so what's next for you?
So what's next? Why I done it. The next thing after that was, and I told my friend, I go, I'm going to go do movies. And he kind of laughed at me. But I've had that reaction throughout my entire step of my.
It's almost a good thing. You're like, oh, but he's laughing at me. This is the path to go. This is the path to go.
It was funny because when he laughed, I just cracked up because I was like, oh, you're doing exactly what everyone else done.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to go be a movie star. And I'm going to do a comedy because I'm scared of comedy and I don't know how to do it. And then since that conversation, I've done 2 comedy films. I've done one with Taika Waititi, which is about to be released. And then I've done one that just released last week in the States called Duel. And
what's it called?
They're different. Duel. Yeah. And then they're like, one's really dark comedy and one's like it's a Taika film. And now I'm going to chase the next fear. When the next fear is like, I want to try and do a streaming network and figure that world out. And then, up until I get my own production company, that's the ultimate goal.
Fuck yeah, man. And what's that timeline? 5 years?
So that's, 5 years away. And in that company, it's going to be called Risk Productions, which means Run It Straight Productions. And I'm gonna have my friends, my best mates, who have talked about this goal. They've known about this goal for years.
Yeah,
and they're all gonna be a part of it, and in different versions. Because Kevin Hart had a show on Netflix, and he put all his mates in there, and he just gave them jobs.
What was that? Real.
Yeah.
Husbands, Real Husbands of Hollywood.
Yeah. And he just put all his friends in it, and they're out there killing it, and that's what I'm gonna do with my mates.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. It's like what Adam Sandler does. All of his movies have the exact same actors in it. And they're all just his mates, and he just produces these movies. Oh man, well, mate, I'm looking forward to watching your journey unfold, mate. I'm looking forward to seeing that production company in 5 years' time. RIS, RIS, right? Run It Straight.
Yeah, Run It Straight Productions.
All right, I'll be keeping my eye out for it, mate. Last question, brother. I want to end because today was really centered around masculinity and we love that. Obviously, that's what we're about here at Momentum. And if you could summarize what it means to be a man to you, and I know that we've kind of touched on being a man of your word is being tough, but it is really big for you. What does it mean to be a man?
For me, it's very simple, and I try to pray about it every morning when I wake up. I wake up and I want to be a man of God. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good father. I want to be a good son, a good brother, good uncle, friend, and last but not least, I want to be the best actor in the world. That's kind of the things that I say to myself. But a man is, and I think about my deathbed almost every day. It's like, am I going to regret? I don't want to have any regrets like my father will have when he passes away. And I guess it's attached to my father because I know he's going to regret it. And I don't ever want to have that feeling that he will have. So being a man is honoring everything in my life, being a true man of my word, doing everything in my ability to be a great father, a great husband, and a great man, so that when I take my last breath, I go out ready to just be like, let's go. Come on, man, send me into the next world because I have zero regrets here. I squeezed all the juice out of the lemon and I'm ready. So that's what will be a great man.
Yeah. It reminds me of that story of the alcoholic father, and he's got two sons. And both sons grow up with the alcoholic father, and one son never touches alcohol, and the other son becomes an alcoholic himself. And when asked, how did you get here in your life? Both sons answer the same thing. What do you mean? Look at my father. Like, how could I not? And it's like with your story, it's a really common story of dads leaving their families, and then those sons growing up, and then them leaving their families, and it's like this really bad, toxic cycle for society, let alone just the family unit, but for society. And so, mate, I've got no fucking doubt that you will be squeezing that lemon for the next, what do you got, 60, 70, 80 more years? What do you got?
Hopefully, bro. And that's why I said it fits in perfectly with what I said at the beginning. It's a choice.
It's a choice.
It's a choice to be a good father. Because I know that it's a choice. Yeah.
Mate, thank you so much for your time, brother. This has been an epic conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Bro, hopefully I'll see you in Hawaii very soon. So,
mate, if you're out here, mate, let me know. Let me know, mate. Yeah.
Sharks Cove, mate. We'll go for a dive.
Thanks for tuning in this week. As always, if you enjoyed listening, please leave a review, give us a shout out across socials, or share with a friend so that we can continue to share these incredible conversations with more and more people.